Avoidants don't always grieve loudly, they grieve privately and later. And night is when their defenses collapse. And this single truth changes how you understand everything you thought you saw. Because when you were in it, the avoidant looked fine. They looked calm. They looked detached. They looked like they could walk away without pain. They didn't beg. They didn't plead. They didn't send long messages. Sometimes they even acted annoyed that you were emotional. And if you're the kind of person who loves deeply, that can make you feel insane. It can make you feel like your love meant nothing, like you were the only one who cared, like you were the only one who lost something. But avoidant psychology is rarely that simple. Avoidants are masters of delayed emotion, not because they don't feel, but because they learn to survive by not feeling too much, too fast, too openly. Many avoidants grew up in environments where emotion wasn't safe, wasn't welcomed, wasn't met with comfort. So their nervous system learned a strategy: disconnect first, feel later, if at all. That strategy can look like strength, but it's often self-protection. It's the body saying, if I feel this right now, I will lose control. So they shut it down, they intellectualize, they distract, they minimize, they tell themselves they're fine. In the day, that strategy works. During the day, the world is noisy enough to keep the feelings buried. There's work, there's scrolling, there's friends, there's errands, there's constant stimulation. There's 1,000 ways to avoid yourself. And avoidants are often very good at staying busy, because business is a socially acceptable form of avoidance. They can call it being productive, while it's actually being numb. They can call it needing space, while it's actually needing distance from their own emotions. They can call it moving on, while they are actually postponing grief. But at night, distractions lose power. At night, the noise fades. At night, they can't hide behind activity. At night, their nervous system finally gets a quiet room, and when the room is quiet, everything they push down starts knocking. This is why night is when their defenses collapse. Not because they suddenly become weak, but because the human body cannot outrun emotion forever. You can postpone grief, but you cannot delete it. You can delay regret, but you cannot erase consequence. The mind can argue with reality, but the body keeps the score. This is also why avoidants can seem cold right after a breakup. They're often in a relief phase first. Relief is not proof they didn't love you. Relief is proof that distance makes them feel safe. Relief is the nervous system exhaling after weeks or months of intimacy pressure. When you were asking for clarity, when you were asking for consistency, when you were asking for the basics, their nervous system interpreted it as demand. So when the relationship ends, their system feels like the demand is gone, and that creates temporary relief. That relief can be so strong it convinces them they made the right decision. And for you watching it, it can look brutal. It can look like they don't care at all. But here is the twist that most people don't understand until later. Relief is not the end of the story. Relief is the delay before the cost arrives. Because eventually the quiet comes. Eventually the space stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like emptiness. Eventually they stop hearing your voice. Eventually they stop receiving your warmth. Eventually they stop having access to the person who used to soften life for them, who used to hold their mood, who used to forgive them, who used to try even when they didn't. And that's when their private grief begins. And private grief is sneaky. It doesn't show up as tears on Instagram. It shows up as restless night. It shows up as checking the phone. It shows up as waking up at 2 a.m. with a heavy chest and no clear thought, just discomfort. It shows up as replaying moments in fragments, your face, your last words, the silence after a fight, the moment you stopped chasing, the moment you looked tired, the moment you accepted you couldn't fix them. Those moments return like flashbacks because their mind finally has space to process what it avoided feeling in real time. This is why people get confused. They say, if they miss me, why didn't they show it? Because avoidants are not built to show emotion when it's happening. They are built to show control. They often only feel safe feeling when they are alone, when no one can witness it, when no one can ask for more, when no one can interpret it as a demand. That's why they can grieve you in private, while still acting detached in public. It's not always manipulation. It's a coping style, a wounded strategy. Now, this keynote matters for your audience because it stops them from measuring love by volume. It stops them from thinking, if they didn't beg, I didn't matter. Some people love loudly. Some people love quietly. Avoidants often love in a conflicted way. They want closeness, but closeness activates fear, so they create distance, and then they feel the loss in the distance, but they don't know how to return without shame. So they stay silent, they hover, they watch, they check. They try to soothe themselves with distraction, but at night, the body doesn't care about their pride. At night, the truth arrives. And here is the most important lesson for you. The fact that they can't sleep is not your invitation to rescue them. It's your proof that consequence is real. It's your proof that your absence has weight. It's your proof that you are not too much. You are asking for real love, and real love requires presence. So if they are grieving quietly, let them. Because the moment you stop chasing and stop saving, you stop teaching them that they can avoid and still be comforted. And that is when the cycle finally breaks, not through drama, but through reality. The twist viewers don't expect is that at first an avoidant often feels relief, not heartbreak, and that relief can look like proof they never cared. But it's not proof of indifference, it's proof of how their nervous system is wired around closeness. For an avoidant, intimacy can feel like pressure, even when the relationship is loving. Expectations feel heavy, emotional conversations feel like a trap. Being needed feels like responsibility they don't know how to carry. So when the relationship ends or when distance is created, their body experiences something like oxygen, their chest loosens, their mind quiets. Their system says, finally, space. And that relief is powerful enough to make them believe they made the right choice, even if part of them loved you. This is where so many people misinterpret the story. They see the avoidant posting laughing, going out, acting normal, and they think, wow, they're fine. But what you're often watching is not happiness, it's regulation. Relief is their regulation. Space is their regulation. Control is their regulation. They don't regulate through closeness the way a secure or anxious partner does. They regulate through distance. So immediately after the separation, their system calms down and they confuse calm with certainty. Calm feels like, I'm better without this. Calm feels like it was too much. Calm feels like, I'm finally free. And they attach meaning to that calm, because the mind always creates a story to match the body. But relief is the first chapter, not the ending. Relief is the delay before the quiet reveals what was lost. Because the moment the world gets quiet, the cost begins. And the cost doesn't come like a dramatic breakdown. It comes like a slow leak in the soul. It comes like restlessness. It comes like boredom that no amount of scrolling fixes. It comes like irritation. It comes like late-night thinking. It comes like waking up and feeling empty without knowing why. It comes like the strange feeling that something is missing, but their pride won't let them name it. Here's the psychological truth. When you were with them, you didn't just give them love. You gave them stability. You gave them emotional organization. You gave them warmth. You gave them a place where their nervous system could soften, even if they didn't admit it. You gave them a kind of daily grounding. Your presence became a regulating force in their life, like a steady heartbeat in the background. And avoidants often don't recognize how much they relied on that until it's gone, because they were focused on the pressure, not on the gift. So at first they feel relief because the pressure disappears. But then the gift disappears too. And the human mind cannot lose a gift without eventually noticing the absence. This is why the quiet is what starts changing them. In the quiet, they start realizing what you did for them emotionally, even if you never called it that. You were the one who made the home feel warm. You were the one who kept the connection alive. You were the one who tried to repair. You were the one who held space for their moods. You were the one who offered reassurance when they were distant. You were the one who gave them patience, softness, loyalty. And when you're gone, life feels colder. Now, this is where the audience gets hooked, because we all know that moment. The moment after the breakup when the avoidance seems fine, and you feel like you're the only one in pain. You're crying while they're sleeping. You're replaying while they're posting. You're grieving while they're moving on. And you start questioning your worth. You start thinking you were too much. You start thinking you didn't matter. But the twist is, they're not necessarily ahead of you, they're delayed. You're feeling it now. They'll feel it later. You're processing in real time. They're postponing. And postponing comes with a bill. The bill is the late night. The bill is the moment the distractions stop giving relief. Because distraction only works as long as it's exciting. The moment it becomes routine, the emptiness returns. That's why some avoidants suddenly reach out weeks or months later. It feels sudden to you, but it's not sudden for them. It's the moment their relief wore off and the cost hit them. The cost also hits because they start encountering life without your buffer. They have a hard day and no one truly checks in. They win something and there's no one deeply proud of them. They sit in silence and there's no warm presence in the room. They get sick and there's no one soft with them. They feel lonely and casual attention doesn't touch it. And that's when they realize what they called pressure was also intimacy, and intimacy is rare. But their pride fights this realization. Their ego tries to protect them. So instead of saying, I miss, they say, I'm bored. Instead of saying, I regret it, they say, I can't sleep. Instead of saying, I lost something good, they say, I feel off. They don't always have the emotional vocabulary to call it grief, so it comes out sideways. So the second keynote is the twist that makes the viewer stay, because it reframes what they thought they saw. It tells them, don't trust the first chapter. The first chapter is relief. The second chapter is cost. And when cost arrives, it arrives quietly at night, in the silence, in the moments they can't distract their way out of. This is when regret begins, not as a dramatic confession, but as a slow, haunting awareness that losing you wasn't freedom, it was loss. Why they can't sleep at 2 a.m. is not just because they miss you. It's because your love was regulation, and losing regulation feels like withdrawal. This is the part most people don't understand, because we're taught to think love is just romance, words, affection, dates, chemistry. But in real attachment psychology, love is also nervous system support. Love becomes the place your body goes to feel safe. Love becomes the person who calms you down after a hard day, the presence that makes life feel steady. And when you were with an avoidant, you were probably doing more of that than you realized. You were the emotional stabilizer. You were the one who tried to keep the peace. You were the one who smoothed things over. You were the one who offered warmth when they shut down. You were the one who carried the connection through their cold faces. You were the one who regulated the relationship. Avoidants often don't admit they need that, because needing feels weak to them. But their body still registers it. Their body still learns, this person calms me, even if their mind says, I don't need anyone. So when they leave, what they lose is not only you, they lose the invisible system that helped them stay emotionally balanced. And at first, relief masks it. Distance makes them feel calm. Space makes them feel in control. But once the world quiets down, their body starts looking for the familiar regulation it used to get from you, and it can't find it. That's when insomnia begins. Night is when the nervous system turns up the volume. During the day, they can distract. They can work. They can scroll. They can fill every moment with noise, so they never have to sit with themselves. But at 2 a.m., there's no more noise. There's no more performance. There's no one to impress. It's just them, their body, and the truth. And the truth is that losing you created an internal instability they don't know how to manage. Their mind wants to stay proud, but their nervous system is searching for comfort. That mismatch creates restlessness. It creates pacing. It creates checking the phone. It creates staring at the ceiling. It creates the urge to reach out and then the fear of reaching out. It creates a loop. This is also why avoidants are so haunted by the absence of someone who loved them consistently. Because consistent love becomes a reliable signal to the nervous system, I'm not alone. When that signal disappears, the nervous system can go into alarm, even if the person pretends they're fine. Their body may feel anxious, but they don't label it anxiety. They label it stress. They label it being restless. They label it, I can't sleep. They label it, my mind is racing. They rarely say, I miss them, because that would mean admitting dependence. So the grief comes out as insomnia, agitation, and quiet obsession, and the withdrawal feeling is real. When you lose a person who regulated you, your brain has to adapt to the absence of that soothing. The brain hates abrupt change. It tries to restore the familiar pattern. That's why they start hovering. That's why they check your profile. That's why they watch your stories. That's why they send a casual message that seems meaningless but isn't. They're not always trying to get you back. Often they're trying to calm their own system. They want a hit of familiarity. One reply from you can calm their chest for a moment. One warm message can make them sleep. One sign that they still matter can reduce the discomfort. And that's exactly why you have to be careful, because their reaching out may be more about relief than repair. At 2 a.m., they replay what they refused to feel earlier. The avoidant mind loves control, so it delays emotion. But delayed emotion doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It stacks up like unpaid bills. And at night, the bills arrive. They start replaying the moments that made them feel shame, because shame is the price of losing someone who genuinely cared. They remember your tired eyes when you asked for basic respect. They remember the way you went quiet when you finally realized you couldn't fix them. They remember the last time you tried to connect and they shut it down. They remember the small moments they dismissed, the kindness they took for granted, the loyalty they treated as permanent. And because they can't distract at night, those memories become louder. This is why losing you cost them everything emotionally, because you were not just a partner, you were the person who made their world feel less chaotic. You were the buffer. You were the softness. You were the grounding. And when you're gone, they have to face themselves. They have to face their own patterns. They have to sit with the emptiness they tried to escape by staying distant. They have to feel the loneliness they thought they were avoiding by keeping space. Because here's the irony, avoidants chase space to feel safe. But too much space becomes loneliness, and loneliness becomes pain, and pain becomes regret. And if you're listening to this, The lesson isn't to celebrate their insomnia. The lesson is to understand your value. Your love was not nothing. Your presence mattered. Your consistency mattered. Your absence is loud, especially at night. But your job is not to rescue them from the withdrawal. Your job is to protect your peace. Because the moment you soothe them too soon, you teach them they can lose you and still have access to your regulation. And that keeps them avoidant. Let the night teach them what your love actually was. Let the quiet reveal what they buried. Let the cost be real. And if they return, don't respond to their restlessness, respond to their growth. Because you are not here to be someone's sleeping pill. You are here to be loved with clarity, consistency, and care. The night replay that haunts them is not a clean movie. It's flashes, fragments, and frozen moments, because the avoidant mind doesn't process grief in a smooth storyline. It processes it like a nervous system under pressure. And that's why it hits so hard at night. In the daytime, they can keep the story simple. I needed space. It wasn't right. They were too emotional. I'm fine. But at night, the body doesn't accept the simple story. The body brings back the complicated truth, and it does it in images. They replay your face first. Not your words, your face. Because faces carry impact. They remember the exact look you had when you realized something inside you was breaking. They remember your eyes when you asked a basic question like, "Do you even want this?" They remember the moment you stopped fighting and you got quiet. And that quiet wasn't peace, it was resignation. That is the moment that haunts an avoidant more than any argument, because arguments are noisy and easy to dismiss. But resignation is final. Resignation says, "I've seen the truth." And when an avoidant sees that look in their mind, they feel something they hate, consequence. Then they replay your last message, and it's not always the dramatic one. Sometimes it's the short one, the polite one, the calm one, the okay, that carried 1,000 unsaid sentences, though I understand, that sounded kind but felt like a door closing. Avoidants can run from big emotions, but they struggle to run from calm finality. Calm finality removes their ability to blame. It removes the ability to say, "They were crazy." It removes the ability to say, "They were too much." Calm finality makes them face the simple truth. You didn't leave because you were dramatic, you left because you were tired. They replay the moment you stopped begging. That moment hits like a punch because it changes their sense of control. For a long time, their nervous system may have relied on your pursuit to feel safe. If they pulled away, you closed the distance. If they went silent, you reached out. If they acted unsure, you offered reassurance. Your begging, your chasing, your over-explaining, even though it came from love and fear, also served as proof to them that you were still there. It served as proof of access. So when you stopped begging, they lost that proof. They lost the feedback loop. And at night, their mind replays the exact moment they realized, "They're not chasing me anymore." That moment is terrifying, because it means they might actually lose you. They also replay the small kindnesses they dismissed. This is the most painful part of regret, not the big romantic scenes, the small daily loyalty they treated like it was permanent. The way you checked in, the way you remembered details, the way you made space for their moods, the way you forgave them faster than they deserved, the way you stayed patient when they were inconsistent. In the relationship, those things felt normal. In the absence, those things feel rare, and the avoidant mind begins to revalue them, because humans often value things most when they are gone and cannot be taken for granted. They replay the fights too, but not the way you think. They don't always replay what you said. They replay what they did when you said it. They replay how they shut down. They replay how they avoided eye contact. They replay how they walked away. They replay the moment you tried to have a real conversation and they changed the subject. They replay how they made you feel like your needs were too much, when your needs were basic. And at night, when the ego is tired, the truth slips through. Maybe it wasn't them being too needy. Maybe it was me being emotionally unavailable. They replay the moment you looked like you were moving on. This is where their anxiety spikes. Because avoidants can tolerate distance when they think they still have access. They can tolerate a breakup when they believe you'll still be emotionally available later. But when they sense you are truly detaching, that's when their system panics. So at night, their mind scans for signs. They remember your silence, your absence, your changed tone, your delayed replies, your lack of reaction. They put those pieces together and the conclusion scares them. They might not be there when I come back. And here is the reason these replays keep them awake. They can't fix the past without facing shame. The replays are their mind trying to process, but processing requires ownership. Ownership requires humility. Humility requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is what they ran from. So the mind loops. It revisits. It replays. It circles the same moments like a person walking around a locked door, wanting to enter but not wanting to admit they lost the key. This keynote is powerful because it gives your audience clarity. It tells them, if an avoidant can't sleep, it's not always because they're suddenly romantic. It's because the mind is finally forcing them to feel what they avoided. And the most important lesson for your audience is this: don't confuse haunting with healing. Just because they replay you at night doesn't mean they've changed. It means they feel the cost. Change is shown in repair, consistency, and clarity. Let the night replay be their teacher, and let your peace be your priority. The 6-stage map after losing you explains why they start hovering and testing, and once your audience understands this map, they stop personalizing the chaos. They stop thinking, maybe I imagined it. They stop thinking, maybe I wasn't enough. They realize they were watching a predictable attachment cycle, not a judgment on their worth. Because avoidants don't simply move on in a straight line. They move through stages that often look confusing from the outside, especially because their behavior can change without warning. 1 week they're silent, then suddenly they're watching your stories. 1 month they're gone, then suddenly they're texting. That isn't always love returning. It's their nervous system moving through a cycle. Stage 1 is relief. This is the phase that hurts you the most because it looks like they don't care. They feel lighter. They feel in control. The pressure of intimacy is gone. They can breathe. They tell themselves, I needed space. They rewrite the story to protect their ego. It wasn't right. They were too emotional. It was too intense. They may distract hard, post more, seem fine. This stage is often real for them because distance genuinely calms an avoidant nervous system. But relief is not happiness, it's regulation. And relief is temporary. Stage 2 is curiosity. Curiosity begins when the quiet starts poking through the relief. They start wondering what you're doing. Not always because they miss you deeply, but because uncertainty bothers them. They are used to having emotional access even if they didn't commit. They are used to you being there. So they check. They peek. They accidentally view your stories. They ask mutual friends. They look for signs. Curiosity is their mind trying to reduce uncertainty, because uncertainty feels like loss of control. Stage 3 is restlessness. This is when distractions stop working as well. Their nervous system starts feeling agitated. They feel bored. They feel uneasy. They can't focus. They may feel a low-level anxiety they don't name. They may start craving the comfort they lost, your warmth, your attention, the steady connection you provided. But because avoidants often don't want to admit need, restlessness comes out as irritability, business, or impulsive behavior. This stage is where insomnia often begins, because their body is unsettled. Stage 4 is nostalgia. Nostalgia is where they start romanticizing you. They remember your good qualities more than the hard moments. They remember your laugh, your loyalty, your softness, the way you cared. They start editing the story. The same relationship they called too much now starts to look valuable, because you are no longer accessible. Distance increases value, not because you became better, but because the absence reveals what they took for granted. Nostalgia can make them reach out, but nostalgia alone is not change, it's longing without accountability. Stage 5 is regret. Regret is the heavy one. Regret is when their blame starts turning inward. They start seeing the pattern. They start seeing how they shut down, how they avoided, how they made you carry the emotional weight. They start realizing your needs were not unreasonable, they were basic. Regret is when they feel shame, and shame is what can either break them open or make them run. A lot of avoidants feel regret and then quickly jump back to distraction, because regret requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is what they fear. Stage 6 is insomnia. Insomnia is the body's version of regret. It's the night replay, it's the racing mind, it's waking up with heaviness, it's the urge to reach out and the fear of being rejected, it's the internal bargaining. Maybe I should message, followed by internal resistance. No, that's risky. Insomnia is also where hovering and testing become strongest because they're looking for relief. They're looking for a sign that they still have access. They want to soothe themselves without committing to repair, so they test. Testing is how they try to regain control of the emotional uncertainty. They send a casual, hey. They react to a story. They send a meme. They say something vague like, hope you're well. They do not lead with accountability because accountability is exposure. Testing keeps them safe. Testing gives them information. Testing tells them whether you're still emotionally available. And if you respond quickly, warmly, emotionally, you may unintentionally soothe the insomnia without requiring growth. That's why this stage is so important for your audience to understand. The moment they start hovering is not always the moment they are ready. It's often the moment they are uncomfortable. This is where your viewer needs power, not hope. Power means you don't respond to hovering with full access. You don't punish, but you don't feed it. You make it clear, calmly. That real connection requires clarity. You watch whether they come forward with repair, not just contact. You pay attention to patterns, not spikes, because regret without change is just pain, and pain can still repeat the same harm. The map ends with a truth that keeps people watching to the end. Their return behavior tells you everything. If they return with accountability, consistency, and clarity, you may be witnessing growth. If they return with tests, crumbs, and vagueness, you are witnessing a nervous system seeking relief. And your job is not to rescue their insomnia. Your job is to protect your peace. Don't rescue them too soon, because the moment you do, you erase the consequence that finally forces growth. And this is the hardest truth for a loving person to accept. If you are naturally empathetic, if you have a big heart, if you believe in second chances, your instinct is to soften when you sense their pain. You think, maybe they finally get it. You think, maybe they're suffering. You think, maybe this is the moment they change. And you want to relieve that suffering. You want to offer comfort. You want to give them a warm response, a conversation, a little access, because you don't want to be cruel. But here's the difference your audience must understand. Kindness and access are not the same thing. You can be kind and still not give access. You can be compassionate and still protect your boundary. You can wish someone well and still refuse to return to a pattern that broke you. The reason this matters so much with avoidance is because avoidant behavior does not change through explanation. It changes through consequence. Consequence is the only teacher that bypasses avoidance because consequence is reality, and reality cannot be argued with. When you rescue too soon, you teach their nervous system the same lesson again. I can avoid closeness and still be comforted. I can withdraw and still have access. I can disappear and come back without repair. That lesson keeps the cycle alive. It doesn't matter how sweet your message is, the nervous system learns from outcomes, not intentions. If the outcome of their withdrawal is still your warmth, then withdrawal remains a functional strategy for them. And if withdrawal remains functional, they will keep doing it. Most avoidants don't return because they've suddenly become secure. They return because discomfort has built up. They can't sleep. They feel restless. They feel lonely. They feel the absence of the regulation you provided. They feel that their old coping mechanisms aren't working as well. So they reach out. And when they reach out, they often want relief, not repair. Relief means they want to feel better quickly. Repair means they're willing to face the hard conversation, take accountability, and build consistency over time. Those are not the same. If you respond in a way that gives relief without requiring repair, you become their emotional painkiller, not their partner. And that is why the timing matters. It's not that you should never respond, it's that you should not respond emotionally. You should respond wisely. If you respond at all, you respond with standards. You respond with clarity. You respond in a way that protects your progress. Because the moment you give full access again, your nervous system resets too. Your healing gets interrupted. You start hoping again. You start reading into every message again. You start waiting again. You start organizing your life around their unpredictability again. And suddenly you are losing sleep, not them. Rescuing too soon also robs them of the only experience that can wake them up, loss that feels final. Avoidants often live in a world where consequences are delayed. They can pull away and still keep people close through crumbs and check-ins. They can stay vague and still keep someone emotionally attached. They can avoid accountability and still have a soft landing. That's why they don't change, because the world keeps catching them. But when you stop catching them, when you stop making it easy, they finally meet reality. Reality is uncomfortable. Reality creates grief. Reality creates regret. Reality creates the night replay. And while that sounds painful, it's also the doorway to growth, because growth requires discomfort. People change when the cost of staying the same becomes higher than the cost of changing. So what does "don't rescue" actually look like in behavior? It looks like you don't respond to hovering. A story reaction doesn't get a deep conversation. A meme doesn't get emotional intimacy. A casual "hey" doesn't get your heart. If they want access, they must come with clarity. They must come with accountability. They must come with an actual intention, not a test. It looks like you don't fill the silence with explanations. You don't send paragraphs to help them understand. You let them sit with the consequence. It looks like you stop doing emotional labor for someone who left you carrying it alone. It also looks like you require repair, consistency, and clarity before you reopen your life. Repair means they own what happened without excuses and without blaming you. Consistency means they show up over time, not in a spike of guilt. Clarity means they can state what they want and what they're offering without vagueness. And here's the real test. They must be able to handle your boundaries without punishing you. If they get angry when you move slowly, they haven't changed. If they guilt you for having standards, they haven't changed. If they demand instant access, they haven't changed. A person who has grown will respect your pace, They will understand trust must be rebuilt. They will show up without trying to rush you. And the final reason this keynote keeps viewers until the end is because it gives them a clean exit from the emotional trap. It tells them, your job is not to teach an avoidant how to love. Your job is to protect your peace. Because the moment you protect your peace, you regain your power. You stop being reactive. You stop being pulled by crumbs. You stop being controlled by the timing of someone's loneliness. You become the chooser, not the chosen. So if they can't sleep at night, let them feel it. Let that discomfort do its work. Not because you want revenge, but because you finally respect yourself. And if they return, let it be with maturity, not with tests. Let it be with repair, not with relief. Let it be with consistency, not with nostalgia. Because love that cost you your peace is not love, it's a pattern. And you are not here to repeat the pattern. You are here to break it.